Welcome to We Three Kings.
Welcome to We Three Kings.
Welcome to We Three Kings.
How's it going, folks? Welcome to We Three Kings podcast, your podcast for all your Counter-Strike needs. It's Boggs, Laz, and Pineapple Phillips, three of North America's finest-looking ECL casters. And well, my friends, it's playoff time, and you know what that means. It means brackets, it means predictions, it means one team books a spot at ESL Conference.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited, honestly. I think this is going to be a banger of a playoffs series. I think this is a lot of unexpected things to happen here. I don't even know what to do with it. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about, so I'm just going to wait until we get into it. But Nate, it's always good seeing you, man. It's always good seeing you too.
It's been a long time. It's been a
really long time.
Long time. And, you know, it is great to be here. A lot of things happening between the regular season and the postseason for some of these teams. I think a lot is up in the air, and there's a lot to break down, as you said. So I'm very eager to dissect what's going to happen in this bracket.
Well, you said some things happened, right? I think there's an elephant in the room. That is the departure of Sixy, of Danny. He's left Nouns, and it is unknown, but probably likely he will not be playing the playoffs with this Nouns roster. They've been playing with Stamina throughout the Cash Cup today. It's recorded on Sunday, December 11th. And so right now, without Sixy, I feel like Nouns just lost a huge boatload of firepower. But if they add Stamina to the lineup, does that mean Cynic is no longer going to be IGLing this team? It throws too much into chaos right now. And Laz, like, what do you think is going to go on here? Because realistically speaking, this is a change they're having to make right before playoffs. I don't even know if they're going to be able to get a roster change in. They might have to play with a sub on their actual lineup.
Yeah, and that's kind of the biggest thing for me. Like, I know there was one quick article about this too, and it talked about Stamina, because I was kind of wondering about this, because it seemed like it happened kind of quick, but not really. Because Stamina also left his previous team, and he was just like, yeah, I don't want to play anymore. Like, I'm just going to wait things out. I'm going to stream. I'm just going to do my thing. And I'm like, he's got something in the back burner. And I mean, from what I understood in research is that it sounds like he's been actually involved with Semphis, kind of doing strats and being a bit of an analyst. So that's actually a very interesting piece. So he's been well tuned with this team, but not just playing, but now he's kind of got himself in a permanent spot. So it kind of makes me wonder like how well he can be migrated to the team. But I mean, we just saw a recent result where they played a pretty heavy hitting team in North America, and they did quite well. And I mean, that's already looking like a honeymoon phase already.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting move. I think, honestly, talking about George a while earlier in the season, losing him was a very big factor. Losing, honestly, in my opinion, one of their second heaviest hitters, Sigsy, the young gun, is a really big blow, regardless of how well and how quickly Stamina can fit in. So I'm wondering, and hopefully going to see someone to fill those big shoes, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too, is that George was lost earlier on in the season. He's now playing on the EG Black roster. We'll talk about them later on, as they are one of the teams that did qualify for the playoffs. No surprise there. But George has been one of those players, especially after the Road to Rio performance he put up. That was one of those guys you look at and like, hey, that's a top North American prospect. Keep an eye on that kid. He can frag with the best of them. He put up massive numbers, was by far and away the best Nouns player in the Road to Rio, and honestly kind of deserved a spot at least in the challenger stage of the major, I thought. But George now on EG Black, that's a completely different story. CJ comes in. Nate, we got to see him in his first game. It was not the most inspiring, although his stats have improved throughout the course of this season. Then they lose their Opper. And this was a change that Nouns kind of made after the Road to Rio, was taking Cynic off of the op primarily and giving that duty over to Sixy, over to Danny. And it seemed like Cynic got better as an individual and as a caller without the op duties. And now it seems like the op is going to be forced back into his hands again. I feel like that hurts Nouns in a way that really can't be quantified by statistics, because everything got better when Cynic did not have to worry about firing off the big green gun.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that he did get better at calling. He got better individually on the rifle. That freedom it gave him. But we will say, we talked about Stamina potentially coming in to call. Maybe Stamina can take those reins, and he can get a little bit more freedom in that way on the big green. And maybe that will give him more opportunities for success and an opportunity to fill those shoes. But honestly, it's going to be kind of a dark horse, no holds barred, just expectations out the window game from them in their opening matchup, I would say. I think they have to prove themselves as a unit because those two stars are gone.
Yeah, and the other thing for me too is I know I was able to capture a little bit of for 60 playing too, and the thing is like we've been all been able to see him do pretty well with that op. I kind of feel like with this team he wasn't really being as efficient with that op as I would like to normally see in my opinion. Like I think it could have been a little bit better for him. So I mean him leaving for his own reasons, kind of the weirdest timing in the world, obviously, but clearly there was something going on internally that kind of made it a problem. But I mean, I like this addition to Stamina. I really, really do. Just kind of coming back to him because I think he's going to be a good IGL. It sounds like Cynic's going to run the ship here for the rest of the year for this, these last couple little things going on. And then Stamina is going to kind of take over. And I think rightfully so, like you guys talked about, is his past. He's had some really good success. He's been able to upset some big teams with, lesser known players. So I think this Nouns team has a lot in the future here for 2023 if we can keep this this roster kind of intact for a little bit longer and not just a shuffle.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, too. North America is known for shuffling rosters at incredible speed. You might even say light speed. So to not have a North American roster that is necessarily in flux, it's weird. I mean, I feel like Nouns were together for a long time, considering the personalities on that roster, right? I don't know if one of us would have thought that Nouns would have been pretty much the same core for as long as they lasted, even going back to the Game and Gladiators days, the Squirtle squads. But now that one team that had become a bit of a solidified core, one of the few teams in North America that had a solidified core, has now dissolved. But I think we've gotten the elephant in the room out of the way. We can now look at the rest of the teams here. I got the old groups up on the screen, and we can break down the top 4 makes it to playoffs. If you guys are unfamiliar with the ECL format, top 4 make playoffs from each group. There are 2 groups of 8 teams, and then the bottom team from each group gets auto relegated from the league. But we're not talking about the teams that are on the outside looking in, or on the outside of ECL now looking in, trying to make it back into season 45. We're looking at those top 4 teams, the top 8 overall, and it's kind of funny how both of these groups ended up playing out with exactly the same records across the board. 7-0, 6-1, 4-3, 4-3, 3-4, 2-5, 1-6, 1-6. Tiebreakers separating the bottom 2.
Yeah. And honestly, again, I know we briefly talked about this before we started, but I mean, when you kind of look at the 2 different groups too, I mean, this kind of makes sense to me, right? ATK being at a 7-0 in their group makes a lot of sense. I was actually kind of putting them, maybe they can have a 6-1. I was unsure just because they're kind of shaky at times. But I mean, for Nouns, I was expecting them easily to be top 2, top 3. I wasn't really expecting too much of a difference there. And then when you kind of shift things over, I don't know about you guys, personally, the EG thing really shocked me. But the one thing I got to put a little bit of a caveat on this is that I feel like they haven't been tested. I feel like, again, they are 7-0, which is great to see. But they've only played one team that was a test, and it was one map that I casted, and it was over within the first half. I mean, it was Bulbs that had to get disconnected. He couldn't get back on his computer, and the coach got thrown in. So we didn't really get to see this in-depth game versus a top 3 team in that group. So that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think EG Black still have a lot to prove as a team. ATK have kind of been a core for a little bit longer now. EG Black bringing in that new young gun we talked about, George, over from Nouns. So they have a very high skill ceiling. The question is, can they maximize the skill on display for the roster, or are they going to misplace their pieces? I think right now they have a very solid framework, a very solid groundwork laid. But I think, honestly, if there was a time for them to make a statement, it would be in this playoffs.
And if I can just quickly interject too, and the one last thing I just want to bring up about the groups is, I kind of said this in the beginning of the season. I actually think this was with you, Boggs, is I thought, honestly, Vendetta was one of those teams for me that I was like, this is a dark horse team. This is a team that had Momo, or has Momo, Pluto, Spongy. You have a ton of the guys from the B&B projects and stuff like that. So for them, I think they were getting overlooked a lot from my perspective. But them being at a 4-3 record, it makes sense. They're still kind of figuring things out, but I'm glad to see where they are. I think a lot of people were just washing them out for this season for whatever reason.
I'm actually, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Momo stepped down from the Vendetta roster midway through the season. I'm going to go double check that here because I'm pretty sure.
You're right.
Yeah, it's Tender.
Yeah, you're right.
No, it's not Tender. It's Classia who replaced him on that roster, which is actually a bit of a firepower buff to the Vendetta side. Because Momo's much more of a support player. His role, very supportive, classic support, throw the utility, throw the flashes, let the team around you have the star, have the time of the spotlight. But now without Momo, I'm wondering how Vendetta is going to be able to react to some of these teams where Vendetta doesn't have the same firepower, doesn't have the same tactical acumen that an ATK, even a Nouns, an EG Black for sure, Team 1. I would even venture to say Ironblood would have a deeper tactical strat book than Vendetta at this moment in time, which, given the players on that roster, I don't think I ever would have said previously to this season, but Ironblood has definitely been moving up in that sort of spotlight as well, in that sort of line of work. But also in terms of roster changes, ATK made a move which came out of the blue. Minus MOTM, and they added DJ, who was removed from the EG White roster. I feel like DJ adds some stability to the ATK squad. He's a very solid, consistent player. But Nate, I want to get your opinion. Do you think that's a massive downgrade where the cons of DJ's not as fiery performances outweigh the benefits of his consistent and stable fragging and stability in and outside of the server?
We talked about it earlier, just on the overview, that ATK kind of hit and miss, sometimes just miss the ballpark on their play. So I think adding someone with that tremendous consistency, like you said, does lend itself to this team quite well. Now, removing a star player like MOTM, cost-benefit analysis is the best way to do that. I'm not one that goes super deep into the stats. I know you're the one that really weighs heavily on the stats when we do broadcast, so I'm probably not the person to ask, but I do think that the DJ move on paper does make sense in making this team more consistent throughout. And I think they do have the firepower necessary to make that consistency worthwhile.
Yeah, and for me too, I don't know. I've been really torn on this because ATK to me, and this is no hate towards ATK. I mean, I like the team. Is that I always felt they were really good and they can have these really good moments where they can do really well. But then we also saw these weird times as well where they really stumbled and it would be difficult for them to kind of cross the finish line. I just don't know if I agree that, OTM was the problem. Like, I mean, I don't know what's going on internally. I don't know what's going on with the team. And I know that he's been with the group for a significantly long time. And this is no discredit to DJ because I like DJ. I think he's a great player. I think he's a good addition. The timing was, impeccable. I mean, it happened pretty much within like 2 days. But I don't know if I'm fully on board with it. Like, I mean, I think I need to still see a little bit more of this team to make me feel a little bit better. He hasn't, he's kind of getting himself more comfortable. He's still trying to figure out his role, I think, with this team and the system, right? Like you said, he came from EG, so a very different, structure. So it's going to be an adjustment, but so far from what I've been able to capture, he's done quite well.
Yeah, DJ is definitely a player who can fit into whatever role is required of him. He's a utility man. And every team needs a good utility man. I feel like that's something that ATK lacked throughout most of their time. I mean, they added Swisher, who can be a utility man, but is that really where you want a player of Swisher's caliber in that utility man role? No, you want him to be one of your star players. And with Bowden, Swisher, and MOTM all competing for that top spot, I feel like it really kind of put a bit of a hamstring on one of those players in particular. So making a change was kind of necessary, almost forced out of ATK in that sense, because somebody would need to be the guy who would be willing to take a back seat. And when you have three players who arguably are stars in Bowden, MOTM, and Swisher, somebody's got to get the boot, and I think ATK just decided that MOTM was the guy to remove. I don't think there's necessarily a right answer there between him or Swisher. Both are different players and they provide different things, but I mean, it's sad to see MOTM without a team again. He's a very good player, and I don't think it'll be too long before he can find a new team. Now, if Nouns wanted to add him to the roster after this season of ECL, that could be an interesting replacement, especially since he has opted in the past. He does like to pick up the green gun. Laz, thoughts on that one?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I was kind of like the wheels were turning a little bit when I was starting to see the shuffles, and after the playoffs, I'm like, man, we're gonna get something's got to change, right? And I mean, I think for me, like, I'm still putting Nouns as a heavy favorite for me, and I know you guys will probably have your own opinions on that, but I do agree. Like, I think for Nouns, if they were like looking to pick up MOTM, I think that'd be a huge pickup. Like, I think he could bring a lot of value to this team. It's just, again, building into the system. He is a free agent. I'd actually be totally on board. I mean, they just recently added CJ, which I think, again, he can be consistent, but I think for him, he still has to get used to playing at this level on a more consistent level, in my opinion. I mean, he does well when he does FPL and things like that. And he's played in these divisions before, but that was quite some time ago. So this is, again, a bit of a catch up in my opinion. So somebody that's been active, somebody that's been in qualifying for RMRs, for goodness sakes, you got MOTM, and he's a free grab. So I definitely think this is a good call if they decide to go for that.
Yeah, I think it would be a wise decision. Firepower up for sure. We talked about how they're kind of lacking. They have a big void between those two players leaving. So that would be a very welcome addition, especially when they could slot in such a way. Maybe, as you mentioned, Sigsy wasn't the best in terms of opping. He was still trying to find his footing there. Maybe MOTM can pick up where he left off and kind of work from there, or perhaps even slot in better. Only time will tell there, if, of course, that happens. And, of course, the question with NA teams is, will this core stick together? Because always seems like when one or two, especially star players, leave, it kind of just starts the chain reaction where everybody kind of just gets picked apart from there by the vultures that are the rest of the ECL teams. So now, I don't think that will happen because they do have such a commanding spot right now. Number 2 seed overall. They'll guarantee having an ECL slot next season regardless. I'm hoping they stick together for all of North America's sake. Be the model you want them to be. But at the same time, I have to take it with a grain of salt. That's what happens when these teams lose their star players.
That's a good point. I mean, I think with Semphis at the helm too, you'd be kind of stupid to leave that environment because of a couple of roster changes. Semphis has shown to be a very good coach behind the squad. I mean, his presence alone at the road to Rio was something that you and I both talked about exceeding almost to a bit of an overstatement, Nate, where anything would be going wrong, timeout, Semphis cool as a cucumber with his shades on, just rallying the troops. And they responded very well after the timeouts, too. So I think that's something you get to play under a North American legend. You get to have his brain. You get to pick his brain. And I think that's something that North American players need to do more often, is learn from players who have been there before, have done a lot more. It's something that North America in general lacks in comparison to EU. And it's something that now we're starting to get some of those players taking more mentoring roles that should be capitalized upon by our young stars, by our young players, to try and catapult North America back onto the map where we're not a 1-team region, a 2-team region. Like right now, what is NA? A 1.5-team region? So it's liquid and then maybe complexity if they decide to show up.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, again, just kind of talking about, glad you brought that up because I kind of said this in the beginning, but the fact that Nouns, a team that, is going through a restructure. I mean, yeah, granted they're 6-1 in the division right now, but they added stamina and they beat Complexity. How do we see a team like Complexity lose 2-0 to a team that's with somebody fresh on the roster? And I'm not discrediting Nouns here, but I'm just saying there's a lot of expectation for a team like Complexity. So like you said, I would agree with that. That's like a 1.5 teams in NA really that are that international competing. But like I said, I think both you guys brought this up. For me, is that Nouns, they had some good success or good good storylines here that would happen for the road to Rio. The one thing I'm just disappointed is that they had some decent showings and then things are starting to kind of, I don't want to say fall apart, but there's a lot of changes happening, which makes me a little bit worried. And that's kind of what Nate was going off about, is that the NA the NA way, we always seem to change our rosters and let's have them stick for some time. I definitely agree, and I mean I'm expecting a couple more roster shuffles after this playoff, so I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So
I would agree, and in fact we didn't even talk about the first roster change that started immediately after the RMR.
Yeah.
That was of course minus Jazzpimp plus Carson, which honestly I thought was a mistake at the time. And of course, these other changes are very different. That one was kind of okay, we think this would work better, whereas these changes are George is going to another team and Sigsy wants a new project to work on. So these two different or these situations are very different, but I still see we're talking about this team all the way back at the RMR. Only 2 players remain on this team, 3 if you include the coach. So it's going to be a very different identity for the roster. We'll have to see if Semphis can kind of adjust and pivot with that, and if the rest of the structure of the team can pivot with it, or if it takes a whole new identity. I'm genuinely curious to see what comes out of this squad coming into playoffs.
At this point, I feel like a retool is probably going to be their best bet because, I mean, you're missing a core now. You're down to 2 players, and yes, you have the IGL and Cynic, and that's a big part, but considering the pieces he has to play with, his whole strategies has to change. Instead of, say, having 2 bishops, a knight, and a rook, he's got 2 knights, a rook, and a pawn. So it's there's a completely different way he's going to have to play the game now. How both Semphis and Cynic are going to have to game plan this. So we still don't know what the final Nouns roster is going to be. We still don't know what their exact roster is going to be for playoffs at this point either. So a lot of this is just postulation. But breaking this down too, this is something we've talked about before. All of us have talked about this at one point or another, whether on camera for ECL broadcasts or off of it just in our own private discussions. It feels like one of these groups is not like the other. And Nate, let's start with you here, because the guys on Detonate are people you've been following since for years now, it seems at this point. And their group was a little more, let's just say, stacked.
Yes, I would agree. I want to say as well, you mentioned we're retooling. I'm not going to let you get away from this. You said they're working with a pawn now. Who are you calling a pawn on this roster, Boggs? Who are you giving the diminutive
I don't think
title?
any of these players is capable of being a queen on a chessboard right now. George would be that one player, and he's not there anymore.
It was a joke, you know. I heard the pawn thing. I was like, okay, I gotta make sure I mention this.
I knew as I said it, somebody's gonna bring it up, or somebody's gonna drop a comment or at me or something. But it's just I needed a variety of chess pieces, and I didn't think anyone was capable of being the queen.
Hey, you got to do it. I like it.
You know, when it's bleakest, the pawn does turn into the queen. So
that is true.
It does make sense. You know what? We'll leave it at that. We won't look any deeper. I do agree though. Group A, 100% more stacked at the top end of things. E.g. Black, Team 1, made in Brazil, number 4 seed as well, might I add. Made in Brazil. Kind of crazy that they're the number 4 seed going into playoffs for Group A. I would agree this is definitely a top heavy group, and even into the mid section. Iron Blood, number 3 seed going to playoffs. Strife, the only team not facing relegation of the remaining. Detonate, you mentioned I followed them for a long time when they were Northern Forces, Phantom Troop, Carry Esports, you know, the classic NA shuffle through all the orgs, get ECL. We got the new priorities kind of deal. That's how it always is. This roster's been going through a retooling of its own. They've had a couple of changes going into the season, and I do agree. Honestly, this group was a lot harder, and in fact, I would audaciously assert that Detonate, if they were in the other group, I would say they would at least be in 5th place, avoiding the relegation tournament, if not in that number 4 slot for playoffs.
Yeah, you know what? I can agree with that too. Like, I think we all can agree that one group is definitely a lot more stacked than the other. And I think, like, again, like, that's where I kind of went on that tangent about EG and their group. I'm just saying, like, the only team to me that was going to test them was Team 1 and MIBR. Everybody else I felt was like kind of fair game. And like you said, Nate, as well, like Detonate, again, they're going through a bit of a restructure. So I think a lot of those teams from like the 5th place onwards to the 8th place, again, these were some teams that were kind of reconstructing themselves, just doing a few different things. I know 7 a.m. were, doing a little bit of prep as well. Just unfortunately can never seem to win their matches, but they do have a lot of close games. I talked a lot about that last season here for ECL. That was the exact same storyline. So it just seems to be the same thing. But yeah, I kind of want to quickly touch on MIBR just because for me, Nate, I'm glad you brought that up because I just couldn't believe that we're seeing them at a 4-3 record in 4th place. I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand how we're here with that. And yeah, and they're going to be playing ATK. So, I mean, that's a dangerous matchup. I just feel bad for them.
There's a lot of interesting opening matchups. I also, you told me I had to mention this when I said it in the DMs. I'm going to mention it now. I think combined between Nouns and their surprising roster shuffles and all of the kind of the unforced errors, the kind of Sigsy situation, etc. And we talked about long-standing cores. Ironblood have been together since the beginning, right?
No,
they weren't open for like 2 or 3 seasons.
No.
They've been together for a while.
Oh no.
They've been building the strats.
Oh, please no.
They went. What did they do? Did they go from open to advanced, win advanced, and then did they win advanced or did they?
Yes, they did. They won advanced
did.
against Northern Forces, who later made it to ECL via the relegation tournament.
No,
I believe
they
that was
lost
a
the
lower
relegation
bracket
tournament.
run, wasn't it? Oh no. Northern Forces lost to Ironblood twice.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. And
Yeah.
Northern Forces also lost the relegation tournament and got moved up because of all the teams dying in the NA fashion. So, no, it's been terrible. But Ironblood, they were banned, right? Dark history, dark horses. That's what I'm setting up here. But props to them. They weren't open. They made it to advanced. They won advanced. First season of ECL, which is where most teams kind of just mentally fall apart. If you're not ready for it, if you don't have the backing behind you, you kind of just crumble. you fall apart and you fall back to advanced as fractions or as parts of that team and kind of just find new homes from there. So the fact that Ironblood in their first season of ECL made playoffs and they're back again with the same core, not changing anything up, but building up their structure and their repertoire behind them really gives me that feeling that they could be the dark horses in this playoffs bout.
So what's your, where do you think they finish? Top 4, top 6, top 2?
My goodness.
Conference?
I think there's a strong possibility they win their opener versus Nouns. Seeing the complexity game now kind of throws some spanners in the work, but I do think they have a solid opportunity to beat Nouns in a best of 3. That's tomorrow, or not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. It's Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I don't think they beat EG Black. I think they can make it to the lower they would drop to the lower semifinals from there. I think they could win one more, maybe. They win one more on a really good day. I could see them top 6 or top 4.
Yeah, that's
if we're lucky.
Yeah. No, it's a fun. The one thing I will definitely agree with you, Nate, is that like for Ironblood, honestly, despite their record being 4-3, like this is a really cool team to see starting from the ground zero of Open. I mean, 14-0, they had a crazy run. Did advance, they did really well, got moved up. They kept the same record from last season, 4-3. Same with here now. So you love to see it because, like you said, I think a lot of these teams that move up, I'm going to keep them nameless. Things start to build up. The expectations start to get really high for themselves and they crumble. Like we've seen this from a variety of teams, but fortunately for these guys, I should say, is they're in playoffs and they're in a good position. I mean, unfortunately, in my opinion, they're against a pretty strong team of Nouns. So I wouldn't agree they're going to win against Nouns, but I think it could be competitive and I think they could definitely, catch them off guard a little bit. And that's where I think Nouns have to come in properly prepared and not overlooking them. And I think we've seen that before where Nouns kind of just troll a little bit. They don't take it as serious and it catches up and kind of bites them in the behind.
But do Nouns have that luxury now? And do they realize they don't have that luxury anymore? Because, I mean, that was Nouns with George and Sixie. This is a completely different Nouns.
That's true.
Different Nouns and with a lot of recent games against top tier opponents to study.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I didn't get to watch the Complexity game, but I'm sure Complexity took everything out of Nouns, and that gives Ironblood a lot to study going into Tuesday. They have tonight and tomorrow to watch those VODs if they so wish. And Ironblood, given the fact that they've worked so long together, they should be able to come up with some cool anti-strat ideas from those maps played in the Cash Cup.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. Now, I think we got to break this down. Let's start talking these individual matchups. We've already discussed Ironblood Nouns, so Laz, are you leaning Ironblood here? Or are you leaning Nouns?
Nouns.
Okay.
I'm going 50-50 coin flip.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think that Ironblood is a team that can find a way to win early on because it's like last season in the playoffs too. I believe Nouns won their opening, or rather Ironblood won their opener and then lost everything else. So I think Ironblood's going to come out of the gate hot. Nouns can get blindsided. Nouns are still not in the best of shape. And I think Ironblood are going to come in with a lot of confidence. That's a scary Ironblood team to go up against, but I don't know for sure if Nouns are going to be bested by them. It's going to be a close one for sure. I think it'll go 3. I honestly can't tell you who's going to win it, though. It's too close to call. Both teams have their positives and their negatives, and both teams have their own checkered pasts.
Yeah. It's a good point. And the one thing I wanted to say, and I guess there's an asterisk to this too, because again, like I think for Ironblood, they actually did beat MIBR 2-1. So again, when you kind of think about it, you're like, well, MIBR is a very high ranked team, considerably in our region. Typically right now, like not in ECL, they're not doing quite well, but
they're 25th in the world right now.
Yeah, like that's not bad. That's not that's pretty decent, right? Like I mean, personally, I would say that's not bad at all. And I mean, but them being 4-3 in ECL is shocking. So I mean, for Ironblood, they actually won that series 2-1. So and I know that last map I think was on Vertigo as well, which was a nail biter game. But I mean, they had some pretty dominant victories, and that's a really cool thing to see from Ironblood. This is, like Nate said, a team that came from Open and has climbed their way, kept the same roster. And they've been able to grind, and that's a very exciting thing that I think people can't overlook for Ironblood.
That's a good point. So it's a 1-1-1 split on Nouns Ironblood. Nate Ironblood, Laz Nouns. I'm pulling the cop out here. I'm sitting on the fence for that one. Okay. EG Black Vendetta. I I don't think Vendetta stand a chance here. 2-0 EG Black.
Let me play devil's advocate. No, it's
No,
EG Black.
you're not doing it again.
He's
doing it again, folks.
Well, thank you for choosing the second very interesting close matchup. No, this one's closed and shut in my opinion. There's no doubt. EG Black topped the tougher group in my opinion. Vendetta barely scraped by in the weaker of the two groups in our opinion. I think that alone should tell you what you need to know, regardless of the fact that EG Black have the star power, have everything going for them. They're one of the favorite teams to win the whole tournament, let alone their opening matchup versus one of the lower seeds.
Uh-oh.
Wait. Chop is playing with Vendetta. He got cut from EG Black. Revenge match.
Hey, there you go. Get some redemption.
He got the storyline.
He's coming in.
There we are.
40. He's just gonna do everything. Yeah, I agree with you guys. Like, in my opinion, I think it depends obviously on the veto, the map vetoes and stuff like that. Like, I mean, the only map that you can say for Vendetta that they're strong on is their Ancient. Like, I think it's about a 76% win rate, something like that. So pretty good. And they played about 12 times on it. So decent showing. So if EG Black kind of oversight it and they're like, oh crap, Ancient's in the pool. Yeah, I can see a 2-1. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I mean, EG Black, all things considered, they have a pretty decent map pool and they've been really working on quite a few maps from what I've seen so far in the season. So I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say EG. I'll give it 2-1 though. I'm not going to say a 2-0.
I'm going to say 2-0 unless Ancient comes through. Unless, some bastion of a map. Yeah.
Even then, a lot of that was Momo's support play. They don't have Momo anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Momo's support plays flashes, especially on those takes on T side, were phenomenal. And his utility usage on CT side bought a lot of time, allowed Pluto to get into angles. So I don't know. Even on Ancient, I'm not convinced Vendetta can take a map off of EG Black, who arguably were the best team in ECL North America this season. So, I mean, there's a lot going well for EG Black right now. But
there is.
There's another team where a lot went well for them. Team 1. They did well. They made it to the major. And they've done well this season, too. As you said, they had a DC. They lost Malbs, which is no small piece of the puzzle to drop out. So for Team 1, Disconnected, I think this is another one that's going to be a pretty lopsided matchup. I'm going Team 1 2-0 as well with this.
Yeah, you got my vote too. I think Team 1, they've looked really good. Like you said, they've had, outside of ECL, they've had a really good run. They've done quite well. Yeah, I'm going with the 2-0. I can't it's no offense to Disconnected. I just don't think I'm going to see them pulling an upset with a map. I just think Team 1 are looking really clean right now.
You're saying they struggled when Malbs got disconnected. And
that's the only thing. And again,
it's in the name. It's in the name. I mean,
yeah,
there's no greater storyline than that, really.
Yeah.
And for that reason, no, it's Disconnected. 100%. 100%. It's a storyline at this point.
All right.
It's kind of an amalgamation of. No, of course not. We're going Team 1.
Okay.
I'm not that crazy. Okay, we know I'm crazy.
Hey,
actually,
now if this was relegation, I'd be going Disconnected 2-0 because Swan's dropping 40 every game. But this is the playoffs now. Swan might be the greatest relegation player in the history of ECL. I don't think Swan's ever played playoffs of ECL before.
No, I think this is one of the first times for him. If I remember correctly, I think he even tweeted something. He's really the opportunity just to do it. That's already kind of saying something. And again, this is great. It's a good opportunity for this team. But I mean, you're playing a Team 1 where Maluk has been filthy with that op. I mean, the match I covered, I mean, he was just hitting collats. He was just running around. Like it was scary. Like it was a horror film. I felt terrible for the other team. I was just like, wow, he's unleashed right now. So I think it's going to be a lot. I think Team 1 are really going to bring in the heat for this.
Yep. I think Team 1 take it. I would say 2-0, honestly. I think Team 1 are going to have fun with it. I think Disconnected are going to have a difficult time going for it, but they're going to try their best. But I do think Team 1 should take this one handedly.
They'll have fun.
Alrighty. Well, now what I think is the most tricky match of them all. MIBR ATK. Was the MIBR we saw this season the MIBR will get through playoffs? Probably not. I don't think so. I think we're going to see MIBR really unleashed. I don't think they really give it their all in the group stage. I think they make it to playoffs and then it's like, all right, now it's time to really buckle down and win. And especially after not making conference last season. Did they make it through ESL World Ranking? They might have made it through ESL World Ranking. But not making it through ECL playoffs, I think, was a bit of a disappointment at minimum, and a bit of a big failure on their part. Because going into every single season, the team we always look to be at the top is MIBR, right? They're the team that's playing international competition more often than anybody else we have. They're the team with the name made in Brazil. They're the highest ranked team, a top 30 team in the world. Now they just have to show and prove it that they can do it on a cold and rainy night in Stoke. For all the UK people out there, you'll get the reference. But basically, they'll have to do it when it's not in the bright lights, when it's not on the big stage. When the going is tough, it's a bit muddy, it's a bit murky, it's an all-out street brawl. But you have to get the job done against competition you should be beating consistently. And that's something they haven't done yet.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say as well, this is the two highest ranked teams going out in the opener against each other. Number 25 and number 35. The next closest is team 1 at 36. So this is it's surprising, I will say, Made in Brazil coming in to this tournament or playing in this this season, kind of jet lagged coming back from the major, stuff like that, struggling a little bit there, I'm certain of it, and that might explain some of their issues, but I think this is a really solid chance for them to make a statement, like you said, Made in Brazil. Number 25, technically favored in terms of world ranking. ATK, though, reigning champs, looking to continue their dominance and looking to show us a new form of consistency with DJ on the roster.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, again, kind of like not a full good stat just because obviously changes have happened here for ATK, but I know historically, I mean, ATK, it's like a 5-1. I mean, they have a good record against playing MIBR. I think MIBR could really throw this around, though. Like, this is, I agree, this is probably the best matchup in the opening round. Like, this is the two teams that I'm kind of thinking, like, they shouldn't be playing each other. I didn't think they would, maybe, but I was wrong in my calculation. But yeah, I'm going to, an ATK is a tough one because, again, they have a lot of scrappy games. Like, they always seem to have the lead at one point, and all of a sudden they make it way too close for comfort, and we're pushing overtimes. And MIBR, they can excel in these moments, too. So I think they're going to take this a lot more seriously, kind of like what Bog said, is that now they're in playoffs. They know there's a lot more at stake now. This isn't just regular season. They really got to kind of strap the boots and get going here. So I'm going to say it's an MIBR 2-1. At this one, I'm going to lock it in with.
I will say the X factor, in my opinion, is in the last Cash Cup. They did play on Anubis, and ATK did win that series 2-0. And
that is true. Anubis
isn't in the map pool, but I think that's maybe potentially a sign of things to come. That was when MOTM was still on the roster as well, might I add. So maybe a new look for ATK. I don't know. I just thought that was very interesting they played on Anubis, and I wanted to mention it. But I will say this is the most... Bog said that the Iron Blood Nouns game was 50-50. This is pretty 50-50 as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's a world where ATK show up and take it to MIBR. Could even take it 2-0, honestly, I would say, on the right day. But there's also a world where Made in Brazil do the same thing. So I'm going to say, honestly, from what I've seen of Made in Brazil, there have been times where they kind of look lost, dazed, and confused, where the Opera isn't where he's supposed to be, or he's caught out in the open way more often than he should be. And that kind of hit and miss style is something that ATK, with this pivot in their roster change, should be looking to exploit. So I'm going to give ATK the ever so slight edge and say they take it 2-1.
Ooh. Yeah. Well, I agree. I think there's a world where MIBR wins 2-0. There's a world where ATK wins 2-0. And of course, that means there's a world where both teams win 2-1. Which world will we get on Tuesday? Which team are we going to get? Which ATK are we going to get? Which MIBR are we going to get? It's two teams that lack that consistency. And at least right now, my gut is leaning MIBR. Wow. And I don't know if that's because of the roster change or just I'm trying not to be NA bias, which is very possible. I'm leaning MIBR on this one. I just feel like the group stage was them taking a nap. It was a hibernation mode. And now they've woken up and they're going to be hungry for that first meal in springtime.
Yeah, 100% agree that honestly, because I'm glad you brought that up because that's how I kind of felt. Like I said, I was really shocked and not irritated, but just more like I couldn't, in disbelief really, that they were in a position where they were 4-3 because we know that MIBR can have really good success. We know they're a strong team. like you said, outside of ECL, they've done really well. So I agree. Like, I think the regular season was kind of just like hibernation. I think that's probably the best way to describe it, because they were still playing, like, obviously giving it all, but not quite 100%. Like, I think they were kind of still just getting themselves to make sure they get the wins. Now that things have changed, playoffs is underway. They have a heavy hitter to go against, ATK, but ATK do look good with DJ anyways. Like, I thought maybe they will look a little bit more lost than they do. But I think MIBR, I think I agree with you, Boggs. Like, I'm just going to reiterate that. I think MIBR got this thing 2-1.
Doubters. I must say. I think ATK. I'll say I'll expose my scrim books. I scrimmed. I saw Swish the other day. I had a pregame interview with him. I said it was a pregame interview. He said he's looking to make it a back to back. He's looking to continue. He's looking to establish an ATK. What's the term I'm looking for? Dynasty. That's the term I would use.
Mm-hmm.
So those are big words that I'm ascribing to Swisher that he may or may not have said. But honestly, I do think ATK have it. I do think that they have an opportunity here. I do agree with you, Made in Brazil. I would say they were giving their all at the moment, but their all was definitely stretched thin because they had so many other things going on. And so they just simply played a little bit more loose because they had to, just for the sake of the mentals, for the sake of what they had going along in addition to ECL. And I do agree they're going to show up with a more cohesive squad, or as a more cohesive squad coming into playoffs, given this should be the focus of their attention. But I still think that ATK, given what they've built up and given this notoriety, I think they should have the edge, in my opinion.
Well, since we're kind of split on that, we're split on the Nylons Iron Blood too. Well, why don't we just kind of postulate a bit about what teams we think have the possibility of making it, like realistically should make it into that top four? Because we have a bit of a discrepancy between some of the teams that'll drop into the lower bracket. I mean, I feel like whoever loses Nylons Iron Blood should at the very least be able to win that first round lower bracket. Are we all agreed there?
Yeah, they should be able to beat Vendetta. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I think we're all agreed Vendetta is going down there. I think, I don't want to put any words into anybody's mouth. I think EG Black should be slated, honestly. Can we agree that no matter what happens between Iron Blood and Nouns, that EG Black are going to go through to the to the upper finals? I feel like that's what I'm locking in. That's what I'm locking in at this point, and that means they're top four. That means they're top four.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put that one there. The other side of the equation is a little bit more interesting, right? Team 1 disconnected. We said Team 1 should take it. MIBR, ATK, we were split on. Honestly, those three teams, MIBR, ATK, and Team 1, all look incredibly good. I would say they deserve to be in top 4.
I would agree. I feel like it's going to be rough because the way the bracket pans out, there's either going to be an MIBR ATK rematch or it's going to be ATK MIBR Team 1. And that means one of the teams that should be in the top 4, I agree with you there, Nate, are going to be out in that lower semi. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's also a product of one of the groups being significantly stronger than the other, where the way the seeding has to break down, we're getting a world where at the very least one of the top 4 teams is going out in the second round of lowers.
I do agree. I think it's partly due to the fact that one group was stacked over the other, but I also want to say if Made in Brazil weren't number 4, if they were number 3, they'd be playing Nouns, and it would be interesting. Mm-hmm. And I think that would make it far more even. I think the huge spanner in the works is simply Made in Brazil putting up disappointing numbers in the regular group play. They put up more than enough numbers to get them to playoffs, right? Which is all they really wanted to do, given the fact that this was kind of on the back burner compared to everything else. But it does throw a spanner in the works, and it means that someone's going to go home disappointed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, I think for me, like the thing, like I said, I'll say this again, but I mean, for EG, like I'm just not fully sold on it yet. Like I love that we've seen them kind of reconstruct. They're doing things with the roster. They're clearly having a good record. I just don't know if they've been tested. I think if that Team 1 game that I was casting would have went the distance, I would have felt a lot better of how I feel about them now, or how I'm feeling right now. And I mean, like when you look at their stats, like I just pulled it up. I mean, they have 224 rounds for and only 93 against, but there's, again, a massive like asterisk, like the biggest thing in the world because they didn't finish a BO3. So it makes me wonder, could that change a little bit, right? So, I mean, on paper, they look like they're just killing the division right now. They look like there's like the top of the horse, but I don't know if I'm sold on EG yet. I really don't think I am.
Well,
So I'm gonna ask you this. I know you're not sold on them being necessarily top 4 team, but given the route they've been gifted in this bracket,
True.
do you think they will end top 4?
I'm just looking at it now. Like, yeah, so in my opinion, I think EG will take Vendetta. Then they're going to be playing the winner of Iron Blood and Nouns. I think we're all disagree. We're all kind of split on that. I
Yep.
mean, there is a possibility that they can beat Nouns. I personally think that Nouns are going to beat them, though. I do think that Nouns are going to upset them.
Ooh.
I do.
That's what I wanted to ask.
I'm throwing the
That's what I
fire,
wanted
man.
to
I'm throwing
ask.
some spice,
That's
man.
what I-
I'm not messing around, dude.
So you're. Ooh.
That's interesting because, I mean, I would like to say this. Team 1, in my opinion, are better than every single team in the East group except for ATK. And I'm going to include Nouns in that right now because I don't have enough information on them.
Yep, I think Nouns are a dark horse.
Nouns are the unknown quantity. They are the X variable. They are the one team that could show up and win everything, but they're also the one team that can completely disappoint and bomb out 0-2.
Yeah.
I think they're the one team that could bomb out and go 0-2 of these teams we've been talking about and wouldn't be disappointed, just given everything that's been dealt to them.
Yeah.
Just given all the roster changes they've made, sure, it would be a little bit disappointing, but it would not be roster shattering. The roster would already be shattered at this point if that was the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think going out 0-2 as Nouns, kind of understandable. I'm gonna say it kind of understandable. But you know, I'm very, very intrigued that you're thinking they're going to the top 4 there.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to base it on one match and just saying like their complexity game is like the end all be all. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm really curious about Stamina joining. And again, I guess the question is if he's playing playoffs or not. That's again a huge thing we don't know. If it
You
is
know
60,
what?
that
He's listed on the match page. I checked.
I'm looking at the ESCA.
Oh, the roster. That's a smart idea.
He's on the roster, so I'm going to
I
The
think he's
history.
in.
When was he
play
added?
with them.
When was he added? When was he added? I want to know.
Roster.
well, it sounds like
quick
he's been a
roster,
part of the
yeah.
team for
Date
I thought he was-
joined.
where are you, Stamina?
2 days ago.
Oh, lovely.
2 days ago. Okay.
But that means at the very least he was allowed
It
to
was
join
approved.
the roster.
Yeah, it was approved.
But
and it
is
would
he
have to have
approved to
done
play?
manually. He would have had to been added manually. And why else would they add him? Right? There's no reason
Yeah.
that they would add him otherwise.
Mhm.
He has to be
You know
allowed
what?
to play.
Can we get somebody on the horn?
Yeah, I'm gonna go at somebody in the Discord,
No.
harass them on their Sunday
joking.
evening on God's day. No,
I'm not
doing
gonna
that.
message poor Oso Tank at freaking midnight and be like, "Yo,
Mhm. I need this
I
inside
need to
scoop
know
now.
right now is Stamina playing?"
Tell me right now. You know what? Either way, like again, the reason like I said, I looked at the stats, I watched a little bit of the game, and I'm curious how he would do. Like I think Stamina is a phenomenal player. Like I'm actually really excited that he's been able to join the ranks with these guys. I'm excited for what this team's going to bring in the next year. But I mean, the fact that he was like a +9, he had 84 ADR. I think his rating was like 1.26. Like he was the second highest player on the team against complexity. I mean, you can say what you want about that, but I mean, they went against a pretty decent team to play with, and having a new roster and won 2-0. So that's why I'm thinking, and with him working in the background with Semphis and doing some analyst work and getting all the strats and the coordination together, he is just fitting into this roster. So that's why I think this is a deadly. Like I'm calling them kind of a dark horse, even though they're a 6-1 team. I really do think they have a ton of potential to make uppers. I'm calling it now.
Oh, I also want to mention, just because we're talking about this Cash Cup, because it's so recent in our minds.
True.
I know we're not basing everything off of it, but the next matchup they went up against Pain. They did put up a good fight, I will say, especially on map 1. Stamina was definitely the bottom though.
Yeah.
30 kills overall over the series, -21 in
Ooh.
terms of KD differential.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point.
So
Were the maps any
consistency is interesting. It was Inferno and Nuke. Nuke,
Okay,
known
what
to
about
be
the
disgusting for
Complexity series?
Pain. That's a good question. Let me go check. Complexity match info. That was Mirage Overpass.
So 2 completely different maps.
Yes,
Much
two different
more
maps.
free flowing than Inferno Nuke too, because Inferno and Nuke can be very confining maps.
Mhm.
And again, I think I'm glad you brought that up because I was waiting for one of you to bring this up because I didn't want to be the one to bring it up. But it's, I think you're comparing an apple to an orange too. I mean, Pain is one of my favorite teams. I'm not biased at all here, but I mean, you're talking about Pain. Like this is a
Yeah.
team that like, let's take a moment here. I mean, this is a deadly roster. So I wasn't expecting them to come in and upset Pain, but I was thinking they'd probably put up a little bit more of a fight, but I'm not even shocked. And the first map was an overtime, like a 22-19, which again, that's pretty good considering Pain like have a pretty decent win percentage on Inferno and a seasoned team that plays against like some of the highest competitors in the world. So again, like I'm happy with it despite them losing. And I know Stamina didn't unfortunately have the greatest series, but I think he was also kind of getting himself situated with like the team and the maps were just again a whole other ball game, which is just not fun to do as a new player.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'm with Boggs in that there's so many roster changes that have happened recently. I'm still trying to see if Carson fits in perfectly in complete honesty. And that is far and away from the most recent roster change. You know, CJ, another big question mark to me.
Yeah.
Can he show up? He's kind of hit or miss, kind of absent at times from the server. Stamina coming in. Is he going to IGL? Is he going to give Cynic the op? What's going to happen there? There's so many questions with this roster at this point that I have no expectations, and that's what I think makes them so dangerous to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to describe it, is no expectation. Because how can you have an expectation for a team where, realistically speaking, nobody knows what the heck is going to happen? We still don't know their starting five. They could theoretically play this one without CJ and play with like Whippy. He's still on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Or even Curry. Curry's on the roster. There's so many different things that could happen that could just completely throw things out of whack. Or they could play with Semphis himself. Like, there are too many variables with nouns. They are the ultimate variable here. They are an equation of variables to solve the whole entire bracket. And yeah, nouns can theoretically win the whole thing too. If they play to the best of their abilities, they can win this whole thing. But they can also go 0-2.
Yeah, I agree.
They're the team with the biggest discrepancy.
And
no expectations.
Mm-hmm. And
that's a dangerous squad.
I was just gonna say, like, I'm glad that you guys brought that up again because that's, I think, what Nate said, and I agree. That is what makes them so dangerous. Is that
give me credit. Give me the credit.
I'm giving you some credit, man. Yeah, well, because we were disagreeing with this Iron Blood situation, but whatever, that's fine. We'll agree on this. But yeah, that is the thing. Like, there's just so many question marks. What's happening? I'm expecting Stamina to play, so I'm basing it from that alone. And the reason I'm just basing that is because I think they had a tough group. They did quite well in that group. They played a lot of the talent that's in that group. So I think for them, they've had some pretty good reps and some good practice. So that's kind of why I've been putting such a high horse here for Nouns in this playoff bracket.
Yeah, I would agree. Dark horse, not even dark horse. Dark horse is what you used to describe like a team that's underrated. They're just as Box put it, like an X factor, an unknown quantity. And so I'm interested to see what they do. I still think Ironblood have a big opportunity. I think Nouns are an English class, and Ironblood, they've been together so long that this is down to a science. And I think they can kind of exploit that team's naivety. And we'll have to see, though. I think that's between that and the MIBR ATK game, those are the two most exciting matchups in the opening for me.
I agree. I think those are the ones that need to be broadcasted too. Like, those are the ones I want to watch. I'm going to put one on one screen, one on the other screen, buckle up and enjoy the ride, because these are the two that I feel really shape the entire playoff bracket. And moving forward, like, I don't think Disconnected are going to win a game either. I think they'll go 0-2. It really comes down to what'll end up being, let's see, either a rematch of Iron Blood Nouns in that lower semi and the upper side of things, or EG versus Iron Blood Nouns. So we're going to get EG versus one of the two for sure. We could get EG versus both of them. And
Vendetta versus one of them. Don't count them out, man. Okay.
There's no way Vendetta's winning a series here. I'm just going to say it. I'm surprised they even made it this far.
I was waiting for something that just cut and dry. I was trying to get that out of you. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. All right, you can continue. I just wanted something cut and dry. I wanted something spicy to put there.
Like, Vendetta's a team that only made it because of the weakness of the group. Plain and simple.
Yep,
they have not shown enough to make me believe that they are a team that is going to be a perennial playoff squad. Like EG Black, they should be making playoffs every single time. ATK, Team 1, MIBR, Nouns. Even Ironblood at this point has more playoff pedigree than Vendetta.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. I I fully support your statement there, Box.
Thank you.
We all agree.
I agree. I just wanted someone else to say it.
Yeah, I like it. That's
Coward.
good. Boggs is like he's being assertive. He's like, no, it's this. We're like, oh, good. Yes.
This is what I can't say on casts.
He got very frank with that one, and then he's purely fence sitting on the Iron Blood Nouns game, which is very interesting to me.
I'm fence sitting on that one because I legitimately don't know who's gonna win.
Yeah.
That game
Like, do I have a quarter?
We said we want to watch it. It could just be an absolute train wreck, and we could just click off of it immediately. Like it just terrible. All right, we're watching the MIBR ATK game tonight, guys. We're not watching the other one. It could
that's
be
why I
that
have
bad.
two screens. I could watch both.
There you go.
But it could be so bad you don't want to watch it. You know,
True.
like it could be one of those things.
The Counter-Strike is probably not going to be the prettiest thing in that series. It's probably going to be pretty scrappy. Let's be honest. The one that's going to give us the best, most clean, and beautiful CS is going to be MIBR ATK, which could end up being the final as well.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Yeah. It, and I guess just to add a little bit of like salt to this, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, or some spice, I guess, too, is an ingredient is because I think for me, like, I talked a lot about the mental game for ATK, but the one thing I'm kind of wondering is their expectation because they've won it last season. They want to go for another run at this. They want to win this. Does that pressure build up to them? Does that affect them? Does the performance get reduced? I actually could see that. And I mean, no discredit to the team, but they are new. They have a new roster change. I don't know if they're expecting it, but I think if they're putting that pressure on them, it's really going to affect them. And I think we've seen where their expectations are quite high.
I have a counterpoint.
Let's hear it.
This is a team that had always lost in finals up until the final of the last season. They might have exercised those demons at this point. They got through the wall that is winning a final. And one of the hardest things to do in any sport is learning how to win.
Yeah.
And they learned how to win. They finally got the job done. Now it's time to see if they can do it again. I think, if anything, they'll be playing with a little more brevity because they've already done it once. Might as well go and do it again. Run it back, boys.
Hey, that's fair. I will make one comment before I cut Nate off here. I'm sorry, Nate, but I guess the counterpoint to your counterpoint is that for me, the thing that I've struggled with ATK for a long time, and again, this is no discredit to them at all, is like when I look at their history in the season, I mean, they even lost a map to Vendetta. They've lost, there was a 2-1 series versus Nouns, which they did win. I casted that game, which was a fun series. But again, they've kind of had these like little hiccups, and then a lot of the games are really close. Like they don't make it easy, I think, in my opinion, most of the time. Like, they can be 2-0s, but they can be nail biter games. So like they wear themselves out. And that's what I kind of wonder too, is because now if they're playing in the playoffs and they have a pretty hard, a little bit of a run that they got to go against. I mean, they're playing MIBR first. If they win that, I mean, we all agree they're going to play Team 1. So you're playing against two strong teams, and Team 1 is, in my opinion, one of the clear favorites. So, I mean, they got a tough road. So that's why I'm unsure with them right now.
Yep, they got the easier of the two groups, so I would say they get the tougher of the two sides of the bracket, and I think that's fair. But I do agree. I think MIBR ATK could be a matchup we see in the grand finals. I think it could be a very solid rematch there. I don't know enough about these two teams necessarily to really glean too much from this and pry into it. I will say I think ATK, again, I'm just leaning towards them. I think they're the better team in this one, in my opinion. The slight edge, so slight. But I do think they do have some hiccups here and there, but they always rein it back in. They always recover. They don't count themselves out. They're a very fortuitous team mentally, and I think that's the most important thing, especially when it comes to these matchups in North American Counter-Strike.
They've been there. They've won it before. They're trying to go for 2. It's easier said than done. I don't know if anyone has won back-to-back ECL titles. That's more of a question for M&Ms, but at least for me, I'm not too sure about that. I don't remember anyone winning back-to-backs. That's actually, did Party Astronauts win back-to-backs at one point?
To be honest, I was agreeing with you, and then the part of me was like, I wonder if PA actually was that one team that did win one back-to-backs. Yeah,
they very well might have.
Party Astronauts. We're doing some research.
Let's figure that out, because that also, I think, makes a difference to the overall scope of everything. But while you're looking up that, I got a question to pose. So we're kind of agreed. Team 1, MIBR, ATK, 3 of the top teams in this playoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's
I
that
agree.
fourth team? Who's that fourth team in the Big Four in that Power Four? Is it
Nouns,
EG?
baby.
Is it Nouns? I mean, Laz, you're on the Nouns train.
Yeah.
You're full
All
on
aboard.
the Nouns bandwagon. You're sitting there with your little Nouns flag.
Yes, sir.
So
You're
look.
going Nouns
Yeah.
in that top 4 with EG Black on the outside looking in?
Yes, sir.
And then who do you rate higher? Ironblood or EG Black?
EG Block.
Okay. So EG Black at 5th, Ironblood at 6th,
Yeah.
Vendetta disconnected 7th and 8th.
Yeah. That's how I base
So
mine on.
they won ESA Premier season 38, and then season 39 they went 5th to 6th.
Oh,
Youch.
never mind then.
So they won and they didn't
And
make
then-
playoffs. Oh, wait. No, they did make playoffs.
No, they
Nice.
did. They got 7th to 8th in season 37. They won season 38, and then they got 5th to 6th in season 39.
And what about season 40?
Oh, I'm scrolling up. Season 40. Are they even here in season 40? Are you trolling me right now? You might actually be trolling me.
I mean, no, I think they went to EG for season 40.
Oh, it swaps. The logo swaps from ESEA to
Oh, yeah.
ESL Challenger League. 7th to 8th in season 40.
Wow. But never mind.
Okay.
Wrong.
So I guess maybe nobody has won back-to-backs yet.
Yeah, we'll have to find
Nope.
that out. Doesn't
Nope,
seem like
doesn't
it.
look like it. Doesn't seem like it. Makes sense. It's North America. Everything changes so quickly, even after
Yeah.
winning. Even after
Yeah.
winning.
The only consistencies is that we always have a good Brazilian roster or 2 in the playoffs.
Consistently inconsistent with Brazilians thrown in.
And those teams are always consistent because they stay together. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that hard, people.
Yeah, that's why Ironblood's winning it all. That's
Oh,
why they're
God.
that's why they're winning it. They're the
Oh.
prodigal sons because of that. Just because of that alone. They're the team that needs to be followed in that respect.
I will. If that
Alright.
happens, I will mail you a gift. Like I will buy you something nice, and I will mail you that gift, and I will send a letter to Ironblood saying I shouldn't have doubted you. If that happens, if they win this
It's
whole
not
thing,
happening. It's not happening.
well, you
You're
don't know.
doubting your boys, Nate? Like, come on.
They're not my boys, okay?
Now
They're-
he's turned to. See how
they're
easy
not
that was
my-
for him to turn. I put a
He's
little
just
bit of a prize in
full
there. He's
pivot,
like,
nope. Ironblood are losing everything now. Bye.
no, they're not doing it.
They're not losing everything. I think they still. I'll still stand by it. They're gonna beat Nouns. They're gonna lose to EG Black. Maybe they could offer some resistance against EG Black. I think they're gonna lose it. If they win it, then they win it all. I'll say that. You know what? If Ironblood have worked enough and figured out enough to beat EG Black in the upper semifinals, they deserve it. They deserve it.
But then they have to deal with like the lower bracket or the lower half of the bracket, which has the big hitters in Team 1, ATK, and MIBR.
At that point, I think they have plot armor. That's where I'm at.
What is this? Is this the Kenobi TV show?
This is anime.
Ah.
North America is anime.
So is this their power up redemption arc?
Yeah, this is when they're going to, what is it they say nowadays? Super Saiyan? I don't know. I don't watch anime.
Okay, Super Saiyan is old, man.
That's like
Yeah, I
Dragon
know
Ball
it
Z,
is.
It's
like, come on.
legendary,
I know it is.
but it's old.
I know it is. Power
And
level over
more people need to
9,000.
use that phrase.
I was gonna say that's something I would say. I'm like the oldest here, so
You are the old one,
You
yeah.
are the
that
oldest
is
here.
true. Yes, that's true.
But
Thank
I
you.
will say,
Sorry.
I think we're a little bit high on Nouns, or Laz is a little bit high on Nouns. We're a little bit low on Ironblood, but I think for both those teams, skepticism is your best friend.
Yep.
Yeah. So Nate, give us your top 4 or 5. Give us your ranking.
According to the bracket or according to the teams?
According to the
Because
teams.
I do think
just like a power
I do.
ranking here.
it's very simple. I think Team 1, Made in Brazil, ATK, EG Black at the top 4.
Okay.
I would say MIBR, ATK, then Team 1, then EG Black, simply because we don't have enough from EG Black. You want to really put them in order. But MIBR, ATK, I keep on saying ATK is going to win it, but I think they flip-flop in terms of overall consistency. I don't know. I think MIBR, in the grand scheme of things, have won more and shown us more and deserve a higher spot. But with respect to this tournament, I feel like ATK have the momentum in their favor.
Yeah, I could feel that. I could see that. Although I will say I'm slightly different. I put MIBR at the top right now.
Dang.
Just because when they actually turn on the Jets, they'll be a scary team for anybody to play against. Now, ATK, they're good at dealing with those Giants. They're good at killing the Giants, but are they going to be able to do it again? Are they going to be able to do it without MOTM? There's too many questions around them. I think the teams with the least amount of questions are MIBR, Team 1, and EG Black. Although I do rate ATK as number 2, Team 1 as number 3, EG Black number 4. I'm going to go Nouns over Ironblood just because theoretically they should be better. And then Vendetta over Disconnected as 7 and 8 in my ranking. Now, if I had to pick one team out of the whole batch to win, though, I'm feeling we're not going to have a winner we expect.
Okay.
That's how I'm feeling.
Ironblood, it's coming home.
No,
He's an Ironblood believer. He's an Ironblood believer.
I'm leaning Team 1.
I can see that. That's not too far out of the realm of possibility, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Team 1 Nouns final is just for the craziness because the way the World Cup's been evolving, it's just like a completely bonkers final. I mean, Portugal out in the top 8, Brazil out in the top 8. The semifinals are Croatia, Argentina, and Morocco, France. So, realistically speaking, was anybody expecting Croatia or Morocco to make it to the top 4? No. Am I happy Croatia made it to the top 4? Exceedingly. Am I upset as Croatia, Argentina in the semifinal, not the final? Exceedingly.
Well, it's even like the major too, right? Like, I mean, we talked a lot about that. Like, everybody, like, the meme is just because nobody was able to get a diamond coin because it was just, there's no such thing. Like, it was just everything was an upset. It was just like, you just couldn't believe it. So, like, I don't think anybody got that at all. I mean, if they did,
a few
then
people did. Like, probably 0.02%.
I think the number was 0.2%. The number was 0.2%. I think it was like Leadify or something.
Yeah, which is insane. Like, the fact that we even have that, right? Like, it was just a lot of upsets. And I agree with you, Boggs. Like, there's a huge opportunity that we can see some pretty big upsets here that could happen. I mean, I'd be interested if MIBR do go far in this bracket, because if they do play Team 1, I mean, historically, MIBR do have Team 1's number. Like, they just seem to be better. I think it's, just pulled it up here. Yeah, 7-1. Like, I mean, historically, both the brands, like, so MIBR have a long history of beating them. So that's a big thing too. But I mean, I guess, like you said, it really does come down to these opening matches and like kind of where these teams lie. And like we've all agreed, the last match, the bottom, which MIBR ATK is really going to set the tone for this, because I think if MIBR do win, ATK have a tough road ahead of them, but then it's also like MIBR lose, they might really need to shift a gear and get themselves back into better performance.
Yeah, I think earlier on we talked about Ironblood, Nouns, MIBR, ATK setting the tone for this whole bracket. I don't think so. I think Ironblood, Nouns is a bit of a novelty. It's a bit of an interesting thing because Nouns have no expectations, in my opinion. But the real trendsetter, the thing that is going to really make or break this tournament for these teams is the opening matchup between Made in Brazil and ATK. It's going to set the expectations going into the upper semifinals. It's going to determine who falls out early in the lower bracket. I think a lot rides on that opening matchup. And if you had to choose one matchup to watch, if you only had one monitor and only one match that you could watch through your ISP's internet speeds, it should be the Made in Brazil ATK matchup.
Hands down. Agreed there.
Yep.
Now, I don't think either of you gave me a winner prediction. I lean towards Team 1. Give me a serious winner prediction, Laz.
Oh man, I'm on the spot.
It has to be serious. He said serious.
I can't troll. I think I'm gonna agree. I think for me, like I think Team 1 have it. I think Team 1 are gonna be the. I'm torn between. Like, this part of me wants ATK to do it because I think they can, but I think Team 1, they've looked really good. They really have. So it's hard not to ignore that. Like, even not just the season alone, but just kind of everything behind it. Like, from what I saw, it's like, yeah, it's hard not to pick these guys.
You know, I see any of these teams possibly winning it. I want to say EG Black give us a show of force. They show us that this long con, this 15-person roster, really does pay off, and that these new pickups pay off as well. I want to see George leading the squad to the top, showing us that they have put in the footwork necessary, and I want to see EG Black on top. I want to see them really show us that they have skin in the game.
Yeah.
So we said it's not gonna be a team we expect. I think EG Black is one of those teams we don't expect because they're a newer roster. But
I think a lot of people are thinking EG Black's gonna win this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I think a lot of people think so, but for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and I'm just a quick interjection for me too, because like I said, like I've been a huge EG fan since like the early days, like back in my time when I was a wee lad, like a young boy. But I mean, in all honesty though, like this roster change and just seeing how well they've done, again, for me, they haven't been tested fully. But I mean, even when they were playing Team One, they were having a pretty competitive first map until the Mulb situation. Like, they were losing, then they brought things back to an even game. So I'm actually excited for EG. I just don't know if they have enough for pushing for winning it, but I could see them, if they do well, then I'm more than happy. It's something I've been waiting for as an EG fan. I want to see EG do better, and I'm glad they're finally kind of rebuilding this roster and kind of making it a little bit more competitive, we'll call it.
Yeah, I can agree. I'd like to see Blueprint actually make a good building and not just fall apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm happy to see a lot of these teams, and I am sad that one of these two teams in that lower side of the bracket are going to go home early compared to our expectations. I think overall, a lot of good talent on display here. Nouns and Ironblood, I think, two teams that deserve to be here. Team 1, Made in Brazil, ATK, EG Black, I think are foregone conclusions. The question is, are EG Black able to stand up against these taller teams?
I think that is a big question. I think that's a question that will be a key part to how this whole playoff bracket unfolds. And that could play the biggest part of it all. In the end of the day, how EG stacks up against competition at their actual skill level will determine how this whole playoff, how this whole season of ESL Challenger League North America ends up finishing out. Well, Nate, final thoughts as we start to wrap this one up?
Final thoughts. I think there's a lot to be learned from Ironblood, and I don't think anybody should be sleeping on them. And I'm hoping, honestly, I'm in their court just because of it. That's the main reason, and I want to see them succeed. But I do think this is going to be just one of those big name teams taking the distance.
Mr. Les.
For me, I think for me, like I said, I think I'm more excited to see what Nouns can do. I know I'm really hyping this train a lot, but again, this is a team that I've been waiting for a long time to do some big things, and now they have some new additions, some new strategies. So I'm just gonna say go Nouns.
Well, for me, it's the two teams on the edge of the bracket, EG Black and ATK. Repeat for ATK, or EG Black and to show up and leave some teams black and blue? Well, playoffs start Tuesday, December 13th. And, well, we'll be watching it. We'll be on the action. We'll be keeping an eye on it, folks. But, you got to keep it tuned. You got to be watching North America because you never know what is going to happen out of this crazy region that is basically just sown out of chaos. It is chaos incarnate. So keep your eyes peeled. You never know who's going to pull off the upset, who's going to win. But that is going to do it all for us on this first episode, this first recording of We Three Kings CS podcast. I've been Boggs on behalf of Laz and Pineapple Phillips. We hope you've enjoyed. Please do follow us on our socials. They are up on the top of the screen, or at Boggs CS. It's Boggs with 2 G's for me on Twitter, at LazT_TV. That's Laz with 2 Z's _ TV, or Z if you are Canadian, English, not American. And at PineBoy_Supreme for the Pineapple Phillips for the Nate. Well, folks, we hope you've enjoyed. Drop that follow. Drop that 5-star if you are listening. And, well, we hope to see you again soon. Until then, have a good one.